New polls published on Wednesday show Joseph R. Biden Jr. with a significant national lead in the Democratic presidential race as the contest heads into the intense fall campaign season, with Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders rounding out a threesome that seems to have separated from the rest of the primary field. The new data, which shows Mr. Biden earning the support of about 1 in 3 Democratic voters, stands in contrast to a poll published Monday that showed a virtual three-way tie between Mr. Biden, Ms. Warren and Mr. Sanders at about 20% support each. On Wednesday, the director of that poll called those results an outlier. The latest round of polling suggests that Mr. Biden's national lead, at this early stage in the campaign, has been relatively durable throughout the summer. It has been fueled in part by the former vice president's strong name recognition, calculations about general election viability and goodwill from rank-and-file Democratic voters, even as there are signs of greater volatility on the ground for Mr. Biden in the early voting presidential primary states. Sign up for our politics newsletter and join the conversation around the 2020 presidential race. Still, national polls can offer a snapshot of the Democratic electorate's mood, and of the extent to which various controversies have caught the attention of voters. One of the polls published Wednesday, conducted by Quinnipiac University, showed Mr. Biden as the top choice of 32% of Democratic voters and independent voters who lean Democratic. Ms. Warren came in at 19% and Mr. Sanders was at 15%. Those numbers were close to the figures Quinnipiac found at the beginning of the month, with Mr. Biden standing unchanged despite several weeks of scrutiny over a series of verbal gaffes. Separately, a poll from USA Today and Suffolk University also found Mr. Biden at 32%, followed by Ms. Warren at 14% and Mr. Sanders at 12%. Those numbers stand in contrast to a Monmouth University poll that drew attention from the news media, including the New York Times, earlier in the week. It showed Mr. Biden plummeting 13 percentage points from June, putting him at 19%, with Ms. Warren and Mr. Sanders at 20% each. On Wednesday, Patrick Murray, the director of that poll, said in a statement that it was clear the results had diverged from the polling consensus. It occurs very infrequently, but every pollster who has been in this business a while recognizes that outliers happen, Mr. Murray said. This appears to be one of those instances. Because there is no national primary, the standing of the candidates in the early voting primary states may matter far more than nationwide snapshots. Some surveys this summer have shown Mr. Biden's lead in Iowa and New Hampshire ebbed since he entered the race in April, and conversations with voters in Iowa have revealed signs of an enthusiasm challenge for the frontrunner. Ms. Warren and Mr. Sanders, meanwhile, have established themselves in a tier above the rest of the Democratic field. No other candidate has consistently reached double-digit support in recent surveys. In the Quinnipiac and Suffolk polls, the only other candidates with 5% or better were Senator Kamala Harris of California and Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana. More than a dozen of the Democrats got just 1% or less. The Quinnipiac poll, conducted August 21 to 26, and the Suffolk poll, conducted August 20 to 25. Had margins of sampling error of plus or minus 5 percentage points among Democratic voters. The Monmouth poll, conducted August 16 to 20, had a margin of error of plus or minus 6 points. All three were conducted by telephone. The latest round of polling also suggests that the Democratic candidates are on track to have only one presidential debate next month, after 2 rounds of 2-night debates earlier this summer. As of Wednesday's deadline to qualify for the September debate, only 10 candidates had done so, meaning they can all fit on one stage under the rules set by the Democratic National Committee. The committee requires that candidates land 130,000 individual donors and 2% support in at least 4 qualifying polls in order to make the debate stage. The billionaire impeachment activist Tom Steyer was close to meeting those benchmarks, collecting enough donors and hitting the 2% requirement in 3 polls so far. But he failed to reach 2% in either of the polls published Wednesday morning, leaving him one poll short as the midnight deadline approached. More on the 2020 race. Can $100 million buy a spot at the debate? August 27, 2019. Biden extols his black support. I think they know May. August 27, 2019. Why does Joe Biden healthcare ad stands out? August 27, 2019. Let's block ads. Why?